Go ahead, Ayanna. We're live on Facebook.
Good morning.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's feeling wonderful at this hour, 7:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a pleasure to be here in the space. Wake up, everybody, virtual community, day number 527 is a blessing. It is a blessing. Sure enough. Morning, morning.
Good morning, Sister Ayanna.
Good morning. Who's that? I can't see.
Oh, that's Gina.
Hi, Gina.
Hey, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How you be?
Great, great, great. It's a great day. Very excited to see you this morning.
Thank you. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing, I'm not able to see the participants right now. What do I need to do?
Switch your view from speaker view to gallery view, and
Okay.
then you'll be able to see everyone.
Oh, bam. Okay.
There you go.
Here we go. Okay. Thank you, Tiffany.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning?
Greetings. Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Sister Ayanna. How you doing this morning?
I'm wonderful. How you doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm just getting my morning workout in, you know. I said, I'm doing good. I'm just getting my morning workout in.
Get it in.
Wake up, everybody. It's time to get up. Wake up, everybody. It's time to get up. Stay woke. Stay woke. Stay woke. It's time to get up. Stay woke. Stay woke. Stay woke. It's time to get up. We're healing, we're dealing, we're growing. Together, together, releasing. We're teaching, we're moving. Together, together, we're learning, discerning. We're striving. Together, together, we're leading, connecting, transforming. Together, together.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody feeling? It is such an honor to be here this morning. Yes, it's special for me. Normally I would be sleeping at this hour. I'm an artist, so I stay up late and I sleep in. So mornings like this are very different for me. So I'm grateful to be able to be up and share some things about my life and my story today. So y'all, I can't remember, do I just go right in? All right. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is I am going to probably go past 7:30. And so for those who have to get off at that time, you know, I can make sure that we'll make sure that you get any contact information of mine that you may want. And for those who are able to stay on till about 7:45, we will do that. And this is special for me because I get to do one of the things I love best, and it's just share a little bit about my story. For most who know and some who don't know, I am one of 10 children, actually 11 children, born to two freedom fighters. My father was the late, great Dick Gregory, and my mother, who is still on this earth, is Lillian Gregory. And I was born in 1971. So I was born the 10th child to those two amazing beings. And, you know, I created a play about 10 years ago called Daughter of the Struggle. And I created it for a number of reasons. One, my father was still alive. And I wanted him to know not just who he was to the world, but who he was to me. A lot of times people can belong to the world and be loved by the world, but their family don't know nothing about them. And so I wanted him to know, Daddy, you know, I understand the sacrifice. I didn't always get it. I didn't always get it, but I get it and I got it. And you can rest in knowing that in passing this baton, we're clear. And so, Tiffany, if you would share the very first slide, which is an image of myself, my mother, and my father. That's my pretty mama, and that's my handsome daddy. My mother is country girl from Ohio, a very small town called Willard, Ohio. My father's city boy from St. Louis, and they met in Chicago. They met when he was just starting out. He had no money, not a dime to his name. And he was starting out as a comic, a young upcoming comic in Chicago. The world didn't know him. And she was a secretary at the University of Chicago. Eventually they would meet and create this beautiful love story and create the story of us. And we were all born in Chicago, except for my sister, Michelle, who was born in St. Louis. And we lived in Hyde Park, south side of Chicago, and we moved in 1973 to Massachusetts. But I wanted to share this picture of my parents because I really do know that I am a real mix of both of them in so many different ways. My father is the fire, and my mother is the water, and she is the balance. And so the world knew my father and knows my father as many things, you know, civil rights activist, human rights activist, revolutionary, liberator, truth teller, health guru, spiritual guru, comedian. And so he was many, many things. To us, he was dad. And so I want to share this piece from my play, and it goes like this. As a little girl, I didn't know that life had seasons, that winter made us worthy of spring, and that rain was just as necessary as sun. I spent a whole lifetime avoiding pain and struggle, only to find transformation waiting for me on the other side. I spent a whole lifetime seeking love on the outside, only to find love waiting for me on the inside. It's a critical time now, time to remember and recall who we are, time to become who we were born to be. So plant pure seeds and watch them watch yourself transform back into yourself. There you will find a place where the phoenix flies, warriors rise, and beautiful flowers bloom. My mother was the beautiful flower blooming. My father was the warrior rising inside of me. And so I have to give thanks to these two elders, one on the other side, one still on this side, both representing the Gregory legacy and the story of us. So I would just like to share a little bit about what it was like growing up. For me, I grew up in the early 1970s, but my older siblings grew up in the 1950s through the 1960s. So they literally lived through the Black Power movement, civil rights movement, and the continued human rights movement. Let me see. I'm Charmaine, I'm just looking at your message. Okay. One of the things that I think was probably most challenging is that we had a very atypical childhood. And, you know, a lot of times when you grow up in a really powerful family that is very specific, a lot of times what you see is with those children grow up, they are very estranged. They can be at times, don't want nothing to do with what they dealt with growing up, because it is not, you know, there's a romanticized version of being revolutionary. That is not easy. It does not always feel like something that you want to be a part of or stay a part of, you know? So growing up, for instance, it was a very regular occurrence to pick up the phone as a little girl or a little boy, as far as my sisters or my brothers, and to have somebody on the other end of that call say that they're going to kill my father or bomb the house. There were a number of assassination attempts against my father. The government tried to take him out. And now, you know, America's a funny place where they show you the truth in plain sight, but they make sure that they have done so much programming that you're not looking for it. So the FBI files that are out now, they have to reveal all of these things. And so there's all these files that you can actually research and you see the transcripts of when they were, you know, bugging our phones and, you know, phone calls between my father and Malcolm X, phone calls between my father and Martin Luther King, and different plants, different people they would plant in my father's life or in our family's life to try to befriend us, to get intel, and the whole, the whole conversation around COINTEL, the counterintelligence program that was put in place by the FBI. And so the FBI had a file on my family and my father specifically a mile long. And they would, you know, write code words like, you know, it's time to neutralize Dick Gregory, which meant kill him. And so it was interesting because on the one hand, my father started out as a Hollywood comedian. He was a celebrity. A lot of people don't know that part of him, because depending upon when you got to know him, you may have known him as the brother who created the Bahamian diet, you know, the health guru. But at the very beginning, in the late 1950s, early 1960s, he was a comedian, and he was specifically the first Black comedian to perform in all white nightclubs. And so, you know, Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Club sort of gave him his first big break. And then he went on to speak and perform on prime time at the Jack Paar Show, which was like the Tonight Show of the day. So here's this Black man who's getting prime time airplay at a time where folks were used to seeing, if you were talking about Black people being funny, you were used to shuffling, you were used to saying step and fetch it in images that were not liberating at all. But my father was like, you know, sitting flat-footed as a brother, talking about real things, talking about Black culture and Black life and racism and white supremacy, or white fragility, as we now call it. And so that was not usual. It was not usual to hear a Black man speak to white audiences so candidly about the truth of who they were and what they had perpetuated, and for them to take it and receive it. And so he was very much of an anomaly. I feel like he was one of those people. There's not a lot of people that could get away with what my dad did. You know, a lot of times I'd hear people say, man, I just heard your dad cuss out a whole group of white folks for like 3 hours and nobody moved. And I'm like, yeah, he just had it like that, you know, because at the end of the day, they knew he was speaking truth. And that at the end of the day, my father was about the essence of humanity, and those who really got that. So, you know, again, going back to our childhood, we moved from Chicago in 1973 to Plymouth, Massachusetts. So there was this juxtaposition of growing up in this, you know, power to the people, liberation household, and then we were thrown into this all-white world. And it didn't, for me, it was like living this duality, which, you know, many of us as Africans in America have had to do, live this duality. And so, you know, my peers at school didn't have any understanding of who my father was or who our family was. But for myself, it just wasn't easy because I knew that we were different. And honestly, I didn't want to be different. You know, I was one of those children who just wanted to kind of blend into my environment. And it was really impossible to do that in the household that I grew up in. I knew that we were different. And so it was kind of like, you can't unknow what you know. You know, we were bombarded, you know, on any given day, I'm, you know, listening to my father when he was home. And that was the other thing, he was gone a lot. So there was, you know, that whole conversation of what it was like to have a father who was alive, and, you know, taking care of the family, but he was also in some ways an absentee dad. And so grappling with that of like, how is it that I don't know my father like my peers know their daddies? I didn't have a daddy. I had a father. I didn't have a daddy. And so what I had to reconcile that and understand, okay, your father's not a deadbeat dad. He's in the world, really fighting for the people. And then also getting to know him on the road, you know, because at some point, as you get to become a certain age, he's bringing you with him. And then, you know, you're on the road and you're marching and you're down in, you know, Selma, Alabama, you're down in Louisiana, you're down in Mississippi. And, you know, I'm probably the only sibling who has never been arrested and jailed. You know, it was kind of like in my house, it was like a badge of honor. Everybody's like ready to go to jail, you know, marching and demonstrating. They're just ready. You know, my father was always ready to go, not just ready to go to jail. He was ready to die if he had to. But more importantly, he was ready to live. And I think that that was the piece about Dad. It wasn't just that he was so fearless that he was ready to die. He was ready to live in a way that was so out of bounds and out of the box. He was so outrageous, and he dared anybody to tell him he couldn't or couldn't be it. And so, you know, you think about revolution, and a lot of times we think of a physical war. We think about the physical aspects of liberation, but for him, liberation and the revolution was spiritual. And so both my mother and father were probably raised Baptist. I know my mother was because her father was a Baptist pastor. So all she knew was that way of life as a Black Christian woman in the Baptist tradition. And my father probably the same, you know, raised by a single mother, Lucille Gregory, in St. Louis, Missouri. And so for him to then say, I reject religion and I receive spirituality, we didn't go to church. So when kids, you know, my little white friends would say, well, what's your religion? And what do you believe in? And do you believe in heaven and hell? And I'm like, nah, I don't know about none of that. You know, we pray and we chant weird things like Om and I am. And, you know, we're all in my parents' room, all 12 of us, you know, 10 of us, including my parents. And we're chanting and meditating, and we're vibrating on, you know, what it is to be a living being, emanating love and light and healing from when we were very, very little, from when we were toddlers. We had this understanding, even if we thought it was funny. I remember being in my parents' room and we're all, you know, like doing, you know, kids are gonna make something fun, right? So you breathe and then you and then you trying to out and om, and I am your siblings, and my siblings looking like she cheating, she took another breath. And so, you know, you make it fun, you make it be what it needs to be when you're a child. But the reality was that my father was planting those seeds. He was planting those seeds. And so part of the liberation and the revolution aspect of life for us was that he was introducing spirituality in a way where he said, I don't believe in no isms or schisms. And so that was a really big aspect of what life was. But it also, I didn't know anybody like us. And so it also made me think, like, is this normal? And no, it wasn't. And I slowly grew into, I don't want it to be normal. So there was the spiritual aspect that made us different. Then there was the nutrition and holistic health dynamic. Now, you know, being vegan today is real cute, is real fun. But I'm gonna tell you right now, for those who was pushing that lifestyle back in the early 70s, that was not fun. Not in an environment where you couldn't find it anywhere else. So, you know, at school, nobody want to change lunches with you. And it's like, your food smells funny. And what's that green stuff? And so I had resentment as a child around why we had to eat the way we ate. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I wanted to, you know, eat like the typical American child. And so that was something that I had to also, you know, a lot of us rebelled, you know, there's in the play, Daughter of the Struggle that I do, I talk about, you know, these stories that I would never tell in the past. You know, back in the past, you know, it was always a microphone in our face, like, well, what did you eat today? And I'm like, sprouts and some cherries and salad. Meanwhile, I'm sneaking, you know, the Twix bars and you know what I'm saying? So when daddy was gone, there was some sneaking, and, you know, we trying to reconcile and wrap our brains around what we want to do as we are trying to integrate into typical American society as young people. And then the dynamic of him really trying to teach us something different. So, you know, we had to do a lot of things I didn't want to do as a child. You know, there's no meat, no dairy products, no sugar, no white bread, no ears pierced. I literally didn't get my ears pierced until I was 39. And I was still looking around corners like, where daddy at? Where daddy at? No perms, no haircuts, you know, so there were all of these things, no eating and drinking at the table at the same time, because my father was big on the whole process of digestion. So there were a lot of things that we couldn't do. And as a child, you know, you don't like those kind of rules. And so it took me a while to step away to come back to the kind of wisdom that he was kicking, that I was able to come back to on my own terms. So yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot at one time that was happening. And one of the things that I wanted to say is that I think maybe I'll go to the next. If we can go, Tiffany, can we go to the next slide? So in this slide, you can see different aspects of my father's activism. To the top left, you see my father on the left, and it says joy to the world, the third world too. And my mother's on the right, and she's holding a sign that says love. And they were outside the South African embassy. And again, one of the hallmarks of my father's life is that oftentimes he was just the first to do it. And so part of living a revolutionary life is that you're there when nobody else is there sometimes, and that you are doing things that maybe the rest of the world hasn't even heard about. So when the world found out about the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, 10 years before that, in the 70s, my mother and father were protesting outside the South African embassy, getting arrested, going to jail, with maybe 5 other people. The movement hadn't begun yet, but it didn't stop him from saying, well, I'm a movement. So this is what we're going to do. So, and you see my mother, and I want to speak about her. She was a quiet, unsung hero, is what I call her. You see on the top right, my father getting arrested. I mean, this was par for the course. He was arrested, hundreds of times, literally, beat up by the cops, jailed, sometimes for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. Underneath the first row, you see on the left a picture of my father and a Native American chief. The Native American movement was a very big part of my family's life and my father's life. My mother went to jail, my father went to jail. They would do fish-ins in Seattle, Washington, and other parts of the in various states in the country where Native Americans were fighting for their rights. And that was a really big part. You see him in the middle, it says slavery equals genocide in Sudan. You see him on the far right that says get out of Vietnam. We know that was a very big issue in the late 60s and early 70s. And, it's like, don't talk about the American military, right? And so when you do, you get into a lot of trouble. They were fine with Dr. King talking about all these other things, but they didn't like that. And so you see a picture of him with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Then you see a picture of Medgar Evers. And I have a story about my father and Medgar Evers that I want to share. Can't see all the pictures. Then there's a picture. So I have a Vietnam story, and I know that we're approaching the 7:30 mark. And so I'll just stop right there before I continue, just in case anybody has to get off. And Tiffany, will you share any information, like if anybody wants to keep in touch or get my information? I think we said we were going to share that just for those who need to get off at 7:30. I see that it's 7:28 now.
Yes, I'll be dropping that in the chat. I just want to let you know there are a lot of people in the chat, a lot of our participants this morning who recognize who your father was, recognize him. Jacqueline said comedy was big in my house, and we got to see and hear all of the comics of that time. Most of the comedians were truth tellers back then.
Wow.
And Zakia said, I'm so grateful for your family. And then she agreed with Jacqueline. And Jacqueline added with him, we weren't sure if you should laugh at times. He would be so serious. And then I added, I don't think society thinks about the impact of being a public figure has on the children of these heroes. Thank you for sharing him with us. So we as a community recognize how powerful of a person, a leader your father was, and how difficult that might have been on you and your family at times to not have him, and how he spoon-fed the country the truth. And whether they didn't want to hear it or not, he gave it to them. And they weren't sure whether or not they should laugh because he was talking serious stuff, but he was saying it in a way that you had to laugh at it because it's ironic that this is what was happening in this country. So yes, take a breath, sister. We're going to drop your contact information, and the community is here with you. You can go on with sharing more stories about your great father with us, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for reading them. I don't have my glasses, so please forgive me for not being able to read some of these myself. But one of the things that I did want to say is that, and for those who were around my father, or, you know, even people who look at the YouTubes now, his YouTube interviews, they're like, man, he was so angry. Your dad was angry. He was always cussing somebody out. And I remember this brother who is a friend of mine, a raw food chef in the DC community. He approached me. He said, you know, your dad is, I'm really concerned, man. He's like so angry, and, you know, he's cussing everybody out, and what's going on? And I told him something that I think a lot of people just hadn't thought about. Like, most people don't have to share their father with the world, right? Most people don't. And most people don't necessarily have to see their parents living out their eldership in the public. And so as my father was aging, you think about our elders who are aging and their bodies are breaking down, and they're dealing with all kinds of different things because their bodies aren't what they used to be. Their memory is not what it used to be, motor skills, all of those things. And so as my father was aging, you know, we didn't have the luxury of him aging behind closed doors. He was aging in front of everyone. So the same way that you may be like, oh yeah, my grandmother, my aunt, you know, she be cussing everybody out, you know, but she's at the nursing home, or she's you know what I'm saying? They were just like, well, this is Dick Gregory, you know, he's immortal. And I was like, no, he's still a man, he's still human, and he still is dealing with the aging process. And so it just happens to be that there's cameras in front of it. So, you know, have some grace as you, and most people did. I think especially the Black community, like y'all loved him and were loved by him and felt the love. And you know, I always say, like, look, if you met him and he didn't cuss you out, he probably didn't love you. So, you know, just take it. Take that love, because, you know, his heart, he was so passionate. He had so much fire, and he had done so much work. I mean, this man had gotten shot. He got shot in the riots, in the Watts riots in '68. So many attempts on his life. All of the money that he made, he literally gave it all away. Like, he gave everything he had. And so, you know, he transitioned in 2017. I think a part of him, he was angry. Like, after all the work we've done, you know, so there were aspects of his life that, you know, was like reconciling with. I remember somebody said in 1910, Black people owned 14% of the land, and now they own 1%. You know what I mean? So to see, you know, as our elders doing whatever they could to hold on to our dignity, and where they were literally living in a life and death situation every single day. And to see, like, wow, you know, some of the generations that have come beyond them, after them, have been to some degree more lackadaisical about our liberation and our survival. So in any case, I just wanted to say that, and just thank anybody who ever met him and knew him and shared a kind word with him, or just listened to him, because y'all know he loved to talk. So let's see. I want to share something about Vietnam, because that was one of the images, and I want to share a story about my mom. So let's go, if we can go to the next slide, and it's an image of the family. This was in the early 70s, I think. That's mama on the left and mama on the right, daddy on the left, and that's all of us. I would ask y'all to guess which one I am, but nobody ever guesses it right. I'm the second to the youngest. So that's us in Massachusetts. That had to be, yeah, that was early 70s. Now, my father raised us on 300 acres. Now, obviously, we didn't see most of those acres because it's just too much land, right? For one person to visually wrap their brain around. But needless to say, we grew up on the land. My father had this concept of raising these nature babies. And so that's where I you know, honestly, it was like we were a big experiment, because what he was doing with us, he hadn't seen it. Not to say it had never been done, but he had not seen it. So he was literally just foraging out a way as he was going and just making it up as he went, and or intuiting the way and calling on the ancestors and being, he was in constant prayer and meditation, and he was fasting all the time. You know, people like, man, your daddy was so skinny. There were times my father was like 100 pounds. He would be fasting on liquid, you know, on water, liquids for months. He would fast on air. I remember him and my mom did a 2-week fast on air. No water, no food, no nothing. And so he would do that to get quiet, to get still, to listen to the ancestors, to listen to Great Spirit, the universal intelligence, Mother, Father, God. And that would inform his path, you know. And I think it was like he made a deal with spirit. He made a deal with the spirit world and the universal intelligence and said, I am going to give every fiber of my being, and I'm even going to sacrifice my family if I have to, for the liberation of my people and for humanity and for all life itself. And I really believe that it was this deal he made, because in all logical terms, he should have been dead 100 times. I mean, they tried to poison him. And I'm talking about not just in America. There were so many covert missions that I won't go into, but in Russia, in Germany, in Sweden, in London, in France, so many things that were happening that we didn't even know until many years later. It's like, how did he survive? How did my mom survive? And so, you know, you're on the phone and you're hearing people talk about they're going to kill your father. You know, you see things that you're trying to understand them. Or, you know, I remember there was one time where my mother and my 2 older siblings, they were little at the time, they were standing, my father was getting arrested, but, you know, dirty cops, the whole, you know, it's not just that they're going to arrest you, they're going to beat you up, they're going to try to steal your wallet. There were like 6 cop cars, and my mother tells this story still in amazement. They're marching, they're in Chicago. 6 cop cars come in, rush in, the cops jump out. And my mother says it's like a scene out of one of those cartoons where you just see dust, you know, you just see bodies and fists and you just see dust and you don't even see who's who. But she's standing in horror with my siblings who are little girls who are seeing their father, not knowing, is daddy gonna die? Is he gonna have to go to the hospital? And so my mom says that all she knows is after a few minutes, or what seems like a few minutes, the dust settles, the cops are walking away back to their cars. And my father, who's like untouched now, got a suit on, no harm has come to his body. He bends over, picks up his wallet, because they had tried to steal it in the midst of trying to beat him up, puts the wallet in his pocket and walks to the police car to get inside of it. And my mother was like, how is there not, how did they not break his bones? How is there no blood on his face? You know, and it was like spirit was really, it was like a bubble of protection around this man, that there's stories I could tell you that would seem so unbelievable, but not, because we understand how spirit works. And it was just really powerful. I had siblings who went to jail at 3 and 5 years old. My sisters, Michelle and Lynn, marching against Mayor Daley, the racist white mayor of Chicago at that time in the 60s. They're marching, they get thrown in the police car. You know, can you imagine 3, 5 years old? You're terrified. You know what police do. You know what jail means. And you're thrown in a police car and separated from your mother and father. This is the kind of environment that, you know, I grew up in, even things that I didn't participate in. These are the stories that were passed down, you know, because my siblings, my older siblings, my older sister was born in 1959. So there's a 14-year span between 1959 and then 1973 when my brother was born. So much life was lived within that time with the children. My sisters, Paula and Zenobia, at 14 and 15, or 13 and 14, they were down in Greenwood, Mississippi, marching. And I tell this really emotional story in the play, Daughter of the Struggle, where I become my sister Paula. And they're marching, and first it's fun. You know, you don't make anything fun when you're a kid, right? So they're like, you know, they run track, they're track stars. So they're like walking and jogging, and, you know, it's gonna be fun. And they're down in Greenwood, Mississippi. And not understanding what's about to go down. And then here come the Ku Klux Klan, and they're like, oh shit. And then they see, you know, these armed soldiers with guns pointed at them. And they're, you know, getting ready to cross this bridge. And my sister just, it's like her heart is stopping, and she can't, she's thinking, I'm 14, like I didn't come here to die. You know, my father understood, but it was like, she had to learn real quick how serious it really was, and that they literally could die. And, you know, I go through this emotional, dramatic piece around her saying like, damn, she gets it, you know, and then the images of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was 14, right? And look what they did to him. So they don't spare the children. And so her not wanting to go, and her saying, I don't want to go. And she's crying and breaking down. And she's like, I'm not going. And my father snatches her up and said, let me tell you something, little girl, you're going to cross that bridge and there is no other option. And Daddy said, fear and God do not occupy the same space. You're going to cross that bridge. And she's looking at him, and he's like, there's no other option. This is what's going to happen. And so she's crossing the bridge, but she doesn't want to. And there's an old Black grandmother who grabs her arm and says, come on, baby, walk with grandma. Because there's that aspect of our lives as Black folk, right? And folk who don't even know you, like, come on, walk with grandma. And grandma singing in her ear, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And so she's walking, and she's listening to grandma's voice. Her eyes are closed because she's like, she does not know if she's gonna die, but it's like listening, she's following grandma's voice like she was following the North Star. And so on the other side of that bridge, she was a different child. She wasn't the same 14-year-old. And so these experiences changed us. They changed us. My father's level of sacrifice, he literally meant what he said. He gave all of his money to the movement. This man made tens of millions of dollars, and he left it all on the floor. He gave it all away. My mother still tells us stories today that I didn't even know. Said sometimes there were people who might give, you know, celebrities or folks who knew Dad that might give money to the children, you know, like maybe $5,000 a piece to all of us. So that's 5 times 10, that's $50,000. So I was like, Mama, well, I ain't never seen that money. Before that money could even touch our bank accounts, that money was going to, my daddy would tell my mom, like, no, we need that money for the movement, you know, because those who were on the front line, the foot soldiers, those who were day to day dealing with this, the government was doing so many things to cut their money supply that they counted on folks like my father at the time, who was, before he was an activist, he was a celebrity. And so he had money. And so at the point that he's giving up all of his Hollywoodisms for the movement, that came with a great sacrifice. A great sacrifice. So to go from making millions of dollars and putting all that money into the movement to the point that in I don't know if it was 1901 or 1992, we lost our house. We literally lost the big house that we grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's like, Daddy didn't say, okay, I want to give everything except our house. No, he's like, if the house got to go, the house got to go, because he had given all the money to the movement. And there was a friend of his that had written a 6-figure check to save, you know, to pay the mortgage. And at that same time, there was a situation going down in Georgia in Forsyth County in the civil rights movement that needed him and needed the money. My father signed that check over, and we literally lost the house. And so when I say that his level of sacrifice was to that level, it was literally to that level. He didn't spare the children. He didn't spare his wife. And when I spoke about there being 11 of us, and yet I only knew 10 of us. So I had a brother named Richard, who was my father's namesake, who was born, I think he would have been the third born. There was Michelle, Len, and I think Richard. And so he was named after my dad. He died as a baby, and what they called it then SIDS death, sudden infant death at that time. Right? And he was several months old. And at the time, my father was in Jackson, Mississippi with Medgar Evers. And my father, when he was in Jackson working the movement, he would stay at Medgar Evers' house. And so for those who know how Medgar Evers was assassinated, he was assassinated outside of his home, on his lawn, in front of his wife and children. My father was supposed to be with him. The only reason my father left days before or a week before was because a call came in. My mother called Medgar because Medgar was the point person if my mother couldn't reach my dad. And Medgar said, "You got to call home." And my father was so focused. He said, I'll call later. He said, "No, you got to go. You got to call home." And he said, we can't take away any focus from what we're doing. I'll call later. And he said, "Dick, your son is dead." That was the only thing that could have pulled my father away from what he was doing with Medgar Evers at that time. So of course, at that point, my father flies home. He's with my mother. He's trying to console her. He's in shock. They're in shock. And days later, the phone rings and somebody says, is this Dick Gregory? And my father says, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I just want to tell you, I'm really glad that your nigger baby is dead." This was normal. This is the kind of thing that could be expected at any point in time. And so for my mother, a grieving mother, because a grieving mother, that's a different level of grief. And for her to have to hear that in the midst of all that she was already going through, I can't even imagine. But, there's some part of him that I think believes that baby, that there was like some spiritual connection between the baby's life being sacrificed and my father still being alive, because had the baby not died, my father would have absolutely been with Medgar Evers when he was assassinated. And so it's just these really powerful moments and phenomenons that is just like, wow, so it's deep. It's really, really deep. And then there is, if we can go to the next slide, which is another picture of us. It's a little bit older. It's not recent, but it's older when we're a little bit older. This would probably be in the mid 90s. So this is a picture of that's at my brother Christian's graduation from Morgan State. And so you see everybody, you see all the kids, you see my mother, but you don't see my father. And so this is just to represent all of those moments that my mother had to hold down that my father couldn't be present for. Now, most of the graduations my father was there for, but he wasn't, he was there for my graduation when I graduated from Howard. He was at my high school graduation, and he was, when he was able to be there, he was, but there were times when, he might be in Iran, he might be in Zimbabwe, he might be in Russia on some serious covert missions, So when I look at this woman, this beautiful, quiet warrior, Lillian Estelle Smith Gregory, and I think about her sacrifice and what she did and what she had to live with, and probably stories that she'll take to her grave that she'll never tell anybody because they were just that heavy. I remember my father being out of the country, and so he wasn't in this picture. But that just representing mom and her holding it down. So if you go to the next slide, it's it's an image of my mother. And I just have a quick story to tell about this. So now I'm 12 years old and I'm going through some of my mother's private stuff. Don't ask me why. And I come across this Jet magazine from 1965, well before I was born. And I'm like, you know, I've seen my father on the cover of Ebony Jet plenty of times. I ain't never seen my mother on the cover of Jet. And I'm like, how come I don't know that this issue of Jet exists? Mrs. Dick Gregory, rebel with a cause. So I'm like, I'm confused. I'm like, somebody photoshopped this in? I was so, yes, Gina said, because 12-year-old girls do that. Yes, 12-year-old girls do be meddling in stuff. So I was sure enough meddling in mama's stuff. So I hold the Jet magazine in my hand and I march up to my mother and I'm like, you need to explain this because I don't understand. Because I open up the magazine and I'm looking at this whole feature on my mother and she's giving speeches and she's getting arrested and going to jail. And I was like, what are you talking about? My mother was home with us every day. So I don't know. And I'm like, Mama, I know you were home with us every single day. So I need to know how you were here and there at the same time. And y'all know my mama still ain't answered me. She just snatched that joint out my hand. She's like, girl, give me that, hush. I'm like, why? I don't understand. I need to know who you are. Like, it's one thing for me to say, I didn't really know my father that well as a child because he was gone most of the time. But have you ever lived with somebody every day and you like, I still don't know who you are? Like, who are you? That you were also like a full-time activist and our mama, you know, I know you was already dope because you was holding it down. You know, you was the doctor and the teacher and, you know, staying up late when I was sick and, you know, going to the PTA meetings and the soccer games and the, you know, all of that, breaking up fights and problem solving and just, you were the healer. You were everything. Everything. You were everything. And you were that too. And then I'm like, oh, snap. And then I go down to Selma and they whispering, oh, let me tell you about your mom. I'm like, what y'all know about my mama? They're like, yeah, she sat in that jail cell right there. That was the jail cell for women. Now she was there. She could have left the day after she got in. Now, mind you, my mother was like 8 months pregnant with twins at the time. So it was not unknown. I found out later for her to be pregnant. I mean, she was pregnant for a full 14 years, right? Just straight. She was pregnant for 14 years straight. So most of that time was during the 60s. So I'm like, this woman, 8 months pregnant with twins. My father being famous at the time, they were going to let her out the day after she got in because she was Dick Gregory's wife. But she was like, no, because all these other sisters were in jail. There was no telling when they were going to get out. And y'all know when when the celebrities left, the cameras left. And there was no accountability. And so who knows what could have happened. And so she said, I'm not leaving till they leave it. So she stayed in that jail 2 weeks beyond what she could have. The attorney general at the time was Robert Kennedy. Just a funny side note, he calls the jail cell. He calls the jailhouse to check on her and ask her if she needs anything. Wow, that's deep. Anyway, this was her life. And so I'm like, so there's a song I wrote, 10 babies that she raised and they wonder why she had to be at 10 places at the same time. You can't tell me that this here woman can't fly. Soccer games, track meets, dance lessons, staying up late with me when I was sick or stressing. Let's be clear, she's the reason why I'm here, yeah. She's the rock, the power source they didn't see. She didn't want the credit, so she passed it down to me. But deep down, she's the root holding up this tree. And she don't talk about what she been through. And she don't brag about all the things she do. But you could see the light in her eyes. She talks soft, but got a heart that goes from here to the sky. Mama, this one's for you, so you could see you from my view. A woman so beautiful, a love indescribable. Mama, this one's for you. Mama, so beautiful. Without you, what would I do? Yeah. Mama, this one's for you, you. I wrote that song for Mama And there's a Vietnam War story that involves my mother. In 1969, my mother and father were in London, and there were some Vietnamese friends of theirs who gave them a tape, and that tape was the infamous footage of the My Lai massacre, what the world would know as the My Lai massacre. And for those who don't know, that was a footage of innocent men, women, and children, not soldiers, innocent men, women, and children in South Vietnam being murdered by United States Army soldiers. The government, the American government, of course, knew about it, suppressed it, and intended to never let it out. So that tape was given to my father. My father, there had already been a recent attempt on his life. They had tried to poison him. So he then gives the tape to my mother, and my mother flies by herself with this tape for which she can be killed. And he says to her, there's a chance you might not make it home alive. This is the kind of conversation they would have. And so she knew that when the last time she left her children might be the last time she saw her children. And so she flies from London to Paris, Paris to Montreal, Montreal to Toronto, Toronto to Chicago. She didn't eat because she knew that her food was likely poison. Two white men followed her on every flight. Every flight she got on, they got on. Every time, they were always in view. She recently told me this, I didn't even know. She said they offered her some candy. Can you imagine? She was petrified to have taken all those flights to be by herself. So it was like, my father went this way, she went that way. So of course they're gonna think that my father has the tape. So she rolls with it, and it probably took, a couple of days for her to get home with all those flights. And her children have no idea. They think mommy's on vacation. And all they know is that mommy made it home on Monday for Michelle's dance recital. And that's why I call her a superhero. That's why I call her a superhero, because she was able to be in 10 places at one time. For me not to even realize the level of freedom fighter that she was, I didn't even understand. I'm like, you were here. How were you here in that? I don't get it. And this woman literally helped to change the trajectory of world history, because this is the same tape that the US government then would find out, oh shit, the Gregory family has brought it into the country. Now they had to break the story because they don't want my father to be the one to break the story. And so they had to break the story. This same footage that would help in the process of ending the Vietnam War, this quiet Black woman, come on now, y'all know what I'm talking about. This quiet Black woman that quietly helped to change world history in this way, sacrificing her life. I just say, Mama, I don't know who you are, but I must have done something right to have come through you. And so that right there is a level that I wanted you to understand that the stuff they were dealing with wasn't just domestic, it was international. And the levels of danger were as dangerous as it could possibly get. And that is just kind of what we understood as our life. There were some things that were kept from us, but a lot of things that were not. And so it was just one of those things. And I think my father being a comedian was helpful, because it was almost like his funny was a part of the healing. And his funny also helped to defang the things that were just regular aspects of our trauma that we dealt with as African people during and after slavery. And so it speaks to how multidimensional we are, how we are able to transcend, not in the sense of just repressing, but also able to live with something and also understand that we are superhuman and that we are able to tap into something more powerful, and that at our most painful time periods, there was laughter, there was art, there was beauty, there was music, there was scholarship, there was warriorship, there was healership. We had all of that, and we still do. And so if we can go to the next slide, I think it's a picture of me, my dad. So this is an image of me speaking or singing with my father behind me. And I think my friend Dave McDuffie took this picture. And I love this picture because to me it represents, and I'm about to close out now. I know we done gone quite a bit. I've been talking for a while, but I just wanted to say, because I wanted to kind of bring it around full circle in terms of my parents' legacy, and then me specifically, because all of us in my family, we have a different aspect of how we show up in the world as a part of their legacy. But for me, I'm an artist. I'm a performing artist. I'm a healer. I am an educator and an activist. And I love this picture because to me, it represents my father passing the baton and him having my back, still having my back, And when my father realized I could sing and realized that I had this gift, he would take me around the world with him. We'd be in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Ghana, in Senegal. We'd be all over the country, and it wasn't just me, it was many of my siblings. But he would put me on the mic, and there would be times where they would say, "Oh, Brother Dick, we don't have time to squeeze her in." And he'd say, "Well, she can take my time." And, it was just being an artist in the Western environment is not easy. And I know I have a lot of artists who are on this, who are listening in and watching. And so you know what I mean. This environment is not an environment that really knows how to support artistry. And so a lot of times artists are not taken care of. And so you see, like Nina Simone's and, these amazing legendary artists who literally just kind of lose it, for part of their life, because it's so intense. Art, real art to me is just an expression of spirit. And so to be able to make yourself vulnerable and open is not an easy thing to do, especially in the times that we're living in. And so, there were times it was just hard to figure out, what do I do with this gift? And so growing up as a child of the movement, I couldn't just do any old thing. It was expected that I would get a record deal. I remember in the 90s, I graduated from Howard, and I had a demo, and we were gonna shop the demo. And then it was like, I couldn't do it the way that it had traditionally been done. And in talking to record executives and having meetings with folks and realizing, like, they would steal my spirit. They would suck me dry. I can't do it. But also feeling like a failure because I'm seeing my peers, thrive in that world. And I'm like, well, where do I fit? Where's my lane? How do I do this? And so my father was there, even like, how do I make a living? How do you make a living as an artist, especially when you haven't even quite figured it out? We're so used to, figuring out. My father said, America teaches you the art of making a living, but not how to live. And so, we can make money, but oftentimes the way we make money is in direct opposition to our very beingness. You spend 8 hours or more at a job for many people that they hate or that sucks the energy out of them. And then, maybe 10% or 5% on what it is that they were truly brought here to do. So I always said, look, my father ruined me for any 9 to 5. Like, it just wasn't gonna happen. I had one 9 to 5 and I fell asleep at the desk, and it was like, no, ma'am, it ain't gonna happen. But you still got to figure it out. And my father, I remember times where, rent was due and I'm just on my last, and I'm just like, I'm a grown woman. I shouldn't have to, be going to my parents. I don't understand. And how come I can't figure this out? And, I would meet up with my dad, and he'd take me out to dinner, and he'd drop some money in my hand and say, don't you worry about a thing, baby girl. You just keep doing what you're doing. and it was his way of saying, don't you dare sell out. Don't you dare fall to the pressure and then become something different because you feel like what's in your bank account has anything to do necessarily on any given day to what you have access to in the universe. And so in taking his advice, I just got to a point where I stopped worrying about money and realized you can do what you want to do. You can do it with money. You can do it without money. You can do it. Like, you are your own walking currency. And that has, been my brand that I've been stating for years. I am my own walking currency. And I got that concept directly from my father. I saw this man walk with millions of dollars. I saw this man walk with not a nickel to his name, suited up on a plane across the world, because he was his walk, he was his worth, he was his walking worth. And so that part is a part of the revolutionary conversation, that we get to understand that we are our own currency, that we get to show up as worthy, that we get to show up giving and receiving in that way. And so that has been a really, really powerful aspect of what I've learned from him. And Tiffany, if you can go to the very last slide. I chose this one because it represents my spiritual journey, and it represents my connection to nature and my reverence for the ancestors in the heavens, and my connection to healing. Nature is life. Fertile ground is life. We are earth. We are tree. And when I think about this picture, I think about all that both of my parents taught me in terms of natural ways of healing, and that being revolutionary. And, so all the things I rebelled against, eating fast food and wanting junk food and, getting caught up in the fast way of life of living. I mean, I grew up in the country, or at least I grew up in the boondocks, and moving to the city and getting caught up in a real quick, stick and move kind of pace, and getting on these gadgets and computers and all of this stuff. This picture represents my roots, because at the end of the day, I will always return to this, where there is no need for a computer, a tweet, a post, and where we ultimately get our source of power from. And so what I spend my days doing now as an agent of healing for myself first, as well as for those around me. And I do a lot of sound healing and sound vibrational healing. I work with young people. I travel the world, singing to young people, telling stories, and inviting them to tell their stories. And so I think that, all of my siblings, all 9 of them, they have their own way of representing the legacy of Lillian and Dick Gregory. And this is the way that I have been, doing mine. Matter of fact, I wasn't planning to do this, but I'm going to share. I think I shared it once before, but I'm going to share a little bit of this rap as I close out. Since we were talking about walking currency, called Walking Currency. If I could find it. Okay. So I'm going to close out on this. So many lessons that I got from my dad and my mother. And like I said, he was fire, she was water, and she's also fire and he's also water. And so they were definitely a balance for each other. They represented a beautiful love, and a love that, a sacrificing love. My mother was just really, really, she was happy when we were happy. And I didn't understand, because I used to think I didn't see my mother's strength as a child. And I didn't understand that kind of quiet strength. that can really control the room, but you don't know because it's quiet, you know? So I learned so much about that in later years. But anyway, you know, these days I write and I pray and meditate, and I sit before my altar and intuit meditations, and like I said, share with young people. And I do, I have 2 one-woman shows. One is called Daughter of the Struggle, where I act out some of the stories that I shared with y'all. So I become my sisters crossing the bridge. I become all of these entities. I become my father. And that's, you know, growing up as a child of the civil rights movement. Then there's another play called Who Must You Be? And it's dedicated to Black youth, specifically Black youth who are incarcerated and who have been dealing in and out with the criminal injustice system in America. But, you know, more than anything, I feel like my father taught that the next generation is not supposed to be the same as their parents, right? So for me, when people ask me, like, activism today, for me, looks different than the way that it used to. So when you know, growing up, we were used to marching, demonstrating, going to jail. We were used to, you know, putting ourselves out there. And now my path is a little more of the unseen. My path is really more on the spiritual healing piece. And that's the way I've been led. So I'm not as inclined to march, not to say that I wouldn't, but I am more inclined to go within and work on, you know, conversations with the ancestors and getting instructions from the spiritual places and the healing spaces, because when folks are in combat mode, they don't realize that you still need healing. And you know what I'm saying? You still need the medicine men and women who can help to calm your spirit when you need to be calm. You know, it's like a lot of times people who are always in warrior mode, it's like, no, I don't need no peace. I don't want peace. It's like, but if you are not internally at peace, that's a problem. And so there always must be some level of balance. Even if you are ready for some level of combat, there must be an internal balance. And so that piece is, yes, spirituality is revolutionary, and it's within. It is always, you know, when Gil Scott-Heron said the revolution will not be televised, people interpret it in many different ways, but I remember hearing him speak about, he said the revolution begins here internally, and we always want to go fix something else. And so it begins here and moves out. And we get to be the revolution in the way that we walk, in the way that we speak to ourselves, in the way that we talk to other people, in the relationships that we have, the authentic relationships we have with ourselves, with our families, with our friends, with our peers. We get to be revolutionary in the music that we listen to and the things that we watch. We get to be revolutionary in the foods that we eat, and even the lack of judgment around the contradictions that exist within us, you know, being able to let the secular and the spiritual coexist on the table at the same time, being able to accept all of us. All of that is revolutionary, all of that. And so that part to me is where for me, you know, I say, I'm not my father, I'm not a comedian, you know, I haven't been to jail 1,000 times. And that's not what he was asking of me. He was asking for me to do me, and for the gifts that were imparted on me, that were given to me, to use those gifts, to lift those gifts up in the way of liberation and healing and love for my people and for humanity and for all life itself. And so this rap, I'm gonna do it. I haven't done it in a while. Eventually I'll record it, but it goes like this. Daughter of the movement, I'm Malcolm X in my head, but the truth is I ain't brave enough to say the shit my daddy said. I'm a Libra. I like balance. I don't want to rock the boat, but he was a Libra too. And he remains my goat. He would get up in that ass, mess your head up with the truth, wrap you up for 3 hours and have you leaving with herbs and fruit. Daddy said it's a game, and in the end, love wins. That's why Rome is falling. Can't put it back together again. Your money worth nothing. Your school's closed down. And whether or not you eat, well, what did you plant in the ground? But I digress. We talking about me and my path to find real life currency. see. I had one 9 to 5, but I fell asleep at the desk. It was either ADHD or maybe God's test. I went all around the world only to come back home. I found a brave little girl straight holding the throne. She said, you ain't got to hide no more. It's your time. No more cowering down at the drop of a dime. No more pretending not to know who you are, man. This shit getting old. Find your own North Star. Because the same false prophets that didn't have a clue were the same CEOs trying to teach you about you. Go to school, get a job. You can make it big. They taught you how to make a living, but not how to live. Daddy said, what kind of fool is you? You got the whole universe is what you asked it to do. The same universe that made the sun, moon, and the stars. The same universe that creates real avatars. You say you believe in the miracle of God, but when you pray, you gonna ask for chump change and a job? Now, I couldn't get a job if I wanted to, trust me, because daddy on my mind like, yo, what you doing, G? I didn't bring you in this world so you could play around and pussyfoot just because you got a few bills, you looking shook. Is you a champ or a chump? Because I ain't raised the ladder. Fuck a job, you a G to go light up Saturn. I couldn't get a job if I wanted to, trust me, because I ain't messing with it if it don't inspire or excite me. No more living small, no more giving just a little. No more being shy, no more staying in the middle. We about to take flight, so you better hold on. Fly through the night, put your night vision on. With the eye of the eagle, the heart of a lion, the wings of an angel to keep me flying. Light as a feather, cause a smile every day. The love in my heart, I give it away. Places we will go, things that we will see. Heaven only knows all that we will be. The magic that you have, if you only knew who you really are, the things that you could do. Hey, star people, when you're gonna shine like the light you are. Hey, star people, they can't hold you back because you come too far. Hey, star people, the planets in the galaxy are calling you. Hey, star people, it's time for you to do what you came to do. It's time for you to do what you came to do. It's time for you to do what you came to do. It's time for you to do what you came to do. It's time for you to do what you came to do. Yeah. I'm done, y'all. I love you. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I am open. I'm here. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
Oh my God. That's all I can say. And the fact that you said that's my story and I'm sticking to it, girl, you got me in here on an emotional roller coaster with you, from the highs and the lows of your dad's life and legacy, through feeling your mom's strength and power and grace, and then you coming out here, the Spitfire, and like, I'm my parents' child. Like that. Thank you, Sister Ayanna, for coming and sharing with us this morning. I will be sending you your chat because it is active. I'm just opening it up. I'm seeing applause, hearts, fire emojis. Yes, you are your own walking currency. You're amazing. Please tell the community how to get in touch with you, how to stay in touch with you, how to find you and see these plays that you're putting on. Tell the community.
Yes. So you can find me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, it's just my name, Ayanna Gregory, Ayanna Gregory. So I'm easy to find on Facebook. On Instagram, you can DM me. And on Facebook, my handle is I am, like I'm, and not I am, because a lot of people will write I am, but it's I am Ayanna Gregory. I am Ayanna Gregory. And that's Facebook. That's Instagram. You can also go to my website, which is www.ayannagregory.com. You can also send me an email. I'm at ayanna.gregory@gmail.com. And for those who are interested in booking, only if you're interested in booking the play or booking me for motivational speaking, or, I do a lot of stuff at schools, kids with children, as well as not just kids, but I'm just saying for those educators who, I do a lot of, like right now during Black History Month and Women's History Month, I do a lot of Black history assemblies for schools, elementary schools through high schools, colleges, but also churches and just organizations, and so for those who are interested in bringing me to actually perform, whether it's like lecture or the plays, booking at ayannagregory.com, just the word booking at ayannagregory.com. And so, but like I said, if you just want to reach out to me, you can send me an email, ayanna.gregory@gmail. And so the plays, I actually haven't done the play in a little while. When 2020 hit, I was doing it and I was, traveling around the country doing it. And then when stuff got shut down, I haven't been doing it as much. I've done excerpts of it virtually. And actually, I was actually scheduled to do it at the Black Spectrum Theater in Queens, New York this month, but because of the pandemic, they're putting it off. So, but I do, Black theaters and universities and schools and just everything. So Daughter of the Struggle, like I said, that's the story of my father's relationship with Dr. King, and what it was like from the child's perspective. So that one I love doing that at schools and for like multi-generations, because when I have, grandmothers in the audience with their grandchildren or parents and their children, or aunties and uncles and nieces and nephews, it's beautiful because the elders have lived through the time period that I'm speaking about. And the young people are living through their own stuff. And so it's an opportunity for us to see, these running themes and a lot of stories, because a lot of our elders didn't speak, they didn't tell their story. Many of our parents are sitting on some powerful stories. So in part, like we do this Q&A afterwards where the elders are talking and sharing their stories, and the elders are crying because I've stirred up the emotion in them around their memory of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. And then the young people are looking like, dang, grandma, I didn't know you, Marcia, I didn't know you. And then this whole conversation happens. It's like, come back, storytellers, like, let's bring that back. So the play Daughter of the Struggle is about that journey. And then Who Must You Be is another play that's more geared towards young people. And it deals with the criminal and justice system. It kind of talks about our journey from Africa to America and how we got here. And sort of like, it's called Who Must You Be, because there's this line where I say, who must you be that the mere sight of you makes them want to put a bullet in your back? And the inversion of, oh my God, this is so horrible that they're killing Black people, is how powerful must we be that we evoke this much fear in the eyes of the oppressor and the descendants of the oppressor, that because it's like, if we were everything they said we were, then you would have no fear of us. And so the flip side of all of the horrors that are happening to us is that the majesty, the royalty, the scholarship, the brilliance, the beauty that we actually are is what causes the most fear. And so embracing that, and looking at, wow, what is that? And looking at our children and letting them know, you are a reflection of God. You are a co-creator. You ain't no thug. You were born with ancient greatness. And so that, being able to help them get that. Somebody said is the @ symbol. Yeah, it's the @ symbol. Booking at AyannaGregory.com, the @ symbol. Yep. And yep. So your Instagram, website, email, either emails. And like I said, the booking at AyannaGregory.com, that's only if you're interested in inquiring about actually booking me. But if you just want to send me a message, you could DM me on Instagram at I'm Ayanna Gregory, or send me an email to ayanna.gregory@gmail.
Thank you, Sis Star. Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Mhm.
Coming up tomorrow, community, we have Indigo as Art Empower. That's going to be Tuesday, February 22nd, being facilitated by Reverend Nayamo and Cecile Fondi. So please join us tomorrow for that one. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have Merle McGee, Curiosity, Rigor, and Discipline, Leadership Lessons from My Grandparents. So those are your facilitators coming up Tuesday and Wednesday. So make sure you join us in the space. At the Woo Nation, we want to welcome all new members. So if today is your first time in the community, we want to welcome you. Thank you for choosing to join a community where we come to learn, elevate, ascend. So please let us know in the chat so we can recognize you and invite you to come back tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. This is the Wake Up Everybody virtual schedule. We're live on Zoom and Facebook 5 days a week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 7 to 8:30 a.m. and Mondays and Wednesdays from 7 to 7:30. If you like a notification when it's time to hop on one of these platforms and join us, please text the word Woo Nation, WUENATION, to 74121 for your daily morning notification. It is time to get your swag on. Shop us at bit.ly/Woo Swag. Get your t-shirts, sweatshirts, your thermoses, your coffee cups, all of that merch that you need to rep your community. Get that Woo journal so that you can write down all of these tidbits that the facilitators share with you so that you can build your arsenal and be prepared to face the world that we're in with your Woo merch. Thank you, and here's how you stay in touch with us. Register every week at bit.ly/wake up movement. Here you'll find which facilitators are coming up for the week and which topics will be covered. You can join us on Facebook and our private group. This is bit.ly/Woo community, or on our public page, which is bit.ly/Woo Nation. Follow us on Instagram at Wake Up Everybody Virtual. You can find the clips of today and other sessions at bit.ly/Woo on YouTube. And you can always email us at info.wakeupseries@gmail.com. At this time, I invite all participants to come off of mute. It is time this on Sister Ayanna for sharing her story, her legacy with us. Thank you so much, Sister. It was beautiful being here with you this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
exercise.
Sis, I
Thank you.
Not
Not
bless
enough.
thing.
Every time love you.
Thanks,
Love you.
sis. You are so beautiful. Look at you. Your locks rising. You got them glowing. Look at you glowing.
I like the outfit.
I thank you so much, sis. Much love to you.
Move forward, everybody, and have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
legacy, Sharon.
Loved it, loved
Thank
it, loved it so much. Part
Thank you,
two,
thank
when's part two coming?
Right.
It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I
It
feel
was.
I feel the love,
It was
y'all.
fantastic.
Love
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
As I
Yes,
said, it
it's a
woke me
beautiful
up.
way to start the
I needed
rising.
this.
Love y'all. Thank you.
Love you. Love you.
Bless
Love you.
you,
Love you.
sister. God
Thank you.
bless you.
Thank you.